Right. Good afternoon, all. Good morning, all. Been a long day. Welcome to a meeting of the Falkirk Council Planning Committee held within Grangemouth Community Education Unit, Abbots Road, Grangemouth, Wednesday, the 28th of May at 10 a.m. I am Deputy Convener of Kelly, and in accordance with Section 43 of the Local Government in Scotland Act 2003, I have directed that this meeting will be conducted in such a manner as to allow remote attendance by elected members. They will introduce themselves, the other members of the committee, beginning with Provost.
Provost Robert Bissett. I'm the councillor for Falkirk North Ward.
Councillor Jim Flynn, Cars Kinnaird and Trice, councillor.
Bailey James Kerr.
Councillor Gordon Forrest, Lower Place Ward.
Councillor Jack Red.
Councillor Gary Bowes, Cars Kinnaird and Trice.
Thank you. And online, councillors?
I'm Councillor Anslow. I'm councillor for Ward 4, Kirk Kinnaird, Trice, and I'm the Veterans Champion.
Councillor Ian Sinclair, Falkirk North Ward.
Councillor Fiona Colley, Denny Banknock.
Thank you. We now move on to the officers in the room, please. Introduce yourselves.
Thank you, Convener. I am Ian Henderson, the Council's Legal Services Manager. Thank you.
I'm Bernard Whittle, Development Management Coordinator.
I'm Michael McGuinness. I'm Head of Growth Planning, Sport and Culture within Falkirk Council.
Donald Campbell, Development Management Coordinator.
Kevin Brown, Planning Officer and Development Management.
Catherine Jolly, Planning Officer.
Gemma MacArthur, Committee Officer.
Jim Miller, Committee Services Team Leader.
And online?
David Gray, Environmental Health and Trading Standards Manager.
Morning, Gary McGregor, Engineering Design Manager.
Thanks, guys. Move on now to the business of the day. First, were any apologies?
Thank you, Convener. Yes, we have apologies submitted by Bailey Buchanan and also Councillor Murtagh. Thank you.
Thank you. Second item is declaration of interest, and for your information, I'll read it out. Members should declare any financial and non-financial interest they have in any item of business at the meeting. Identifying the relevant agenda item and the nature of the interest. Are there any declarations? No? None intimated? Move on to item 3, which is a minute of the meeting of the Planning Committee held on the 23rd of April 2025. Are there any questions regarding that minute?
Agreed.
Can we agree the minute?
Agreed.
Yes, thanks. Next item of business, number 4. Alterations, extension and change of use of existing garage to form 2 units for short-term lets at 112 Mary Street, Lauriston, Falkirk. Development P240450 FUL. This is a continuation from the last meeting. We've had a deputation request for this from Mrs. Carolina Sumak and Mr. Jed Haney. Are we happy to accept deputation?
Agreed.
Thank you. Then we will go to Kevin Brown, Officer, to present the report. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. Jim, would you be able to bring up the location plan? I'll go through this and then move on to the floor plan. Thank you. So this application proposes alteration and extension and change of use of an existing garage building to form 2 single-bedroom short-term let units to the rear of 112 Mary Street in Lauriston. The application site sits within a courtyard area to the rear of an existing housing multiple occupation and commercial unit with vehicular access proposed to be taken directly from Grahamsdyke Street to the north of the site. The application includes the provision of on-site parking provision for both of the proposed units. The application was called in for determination by the Planning Committee by Bailey Kerr to allow the committee to consider potential impacts of the proposals on the parking area. And following this, there was a site visit carried out by committee on the 6th of May. Members will see from sections 4, 5 and 6 of the report that no consultees have raised any concerns on the proposal and that no letters of objection have been received. In terms of the policy assessment, this is covered within section 7A of the report. The application has been assessed as being in accordance with the development plan in this instance. The recommendation to Planning Committee is for a grant of planning permission subject to the conditions set out in section 9.1. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Any questions for the officer? Bailey Kerr?
Can we just go back to that first picture, please? Keep, make it bigger, Jim, please. With regards to the, I take it the two red areas is what the application is proposing.
Yeah, so the two red areas, the northernmost one and the larger of the two is a structure that you can see on site.
Existing garage.
That's the garage that's sitting there. The smaller of the two, on the left of the map as you see it there, is where you've seen the foundations of the previous structure and adjacent to the building.
With regards to the two purple with the parking, why won't identify two areas?
Sorry, why have they or how haven't? Sorry.
Why have we only identified those two areas?
This shows the existing arrangement essentially. That there's the other plan that's shown on the drawings there, the floor plans and layout drawing shows the proposed parking arrangement in the courtyard area to the rear of the property. So this here, the application site boundary is outlined in red. Essentially, there's existing parking areas associated with the HMO and the commercial unit that's already in situ at the site.
So I'll ask you the same questions asked at the site meeting for transparency, Kevin. So with the HMO and a commercial unit, with these two added, how many car park spaces does the application need?
We have a HMO with 4 bedrooms and the owner's flat has a 1 bedroom. And then on top of that, the proposal for the 2 bedrooms, 2 single bedroom units there. I think if we move to the other plan, Jim, that shows the parking arrangement. It's the floor plans and layout drawing. So that shows the 7 bedrooms, which covers the HMO, the owner's flat, and the proposed 2 short-term let units.
Is that up in that far corner?
Sorry, yes, the top right of that drawing as you see it there.
Can you enlarge that, please, Jim? So the 2 that's to this side, to the side of the garage, is that when we were on site, there was a proposal that one would go at the side of the garage and another take the trees away?
Yeah, where's the southern, sorry, the one on the bottom of the drawing, if you like, the one that sits by itself there, adjacent to the boundary. I think it's got number 7 in it.
Yeah.
That one there requires the removal of some of the trees which sit on that boundary, or just inside the boundary. There's a land-eye type hedge along that part of the boundary there.
So we're comfortable with 7 parking spaces regarding with the new development as well?
So the consultation process with the Roads Development Unit has considered parking, and we have no concerns with the number that are proposed. As you can see, the proposal is for single bedroom units here, so we wouldn't anticipate there being multiple cars associated with each unit anyway. And similarly, the HMO and the owner's flat, they are the limited numbers of bedrooms, and that's reflected in the parking that's provided for.
Thanks, Kevin. Probably the next question is to either Bernard or Donald. I highlighted this when I went on site, and I spoke to Kevin regarding if we are able to see these drawings and the plans when it comes up my weekly list. We might not have this scenario of going to sites, and bringing this back, because it's either me being stupid and can't get into it, or it's just not there. And we can't see what the drawings is and what the plans is. So is this something that we can look into going forward?
So, yes, we are looking at reviewing format reports at the moment. We do provide a link in the report to the application on the planning portal for members to see already, but we are looking at what information we can provide, just generally in the format of the report. There is some work going on.
Convener.
Yes.
This, I don't know if others are finding it difficult online to hear. I'm wondering if officers, when they're speaking, could bring the mics closer to them and talk directly into them, because it seems whenever someone's turning their head away, I appreciate that that's the case, but when someone's turning their head away, the sound is completely dropping off online.
Okay, I'm sure we can sort that out.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Sinclair. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So I don't know if I need to repeat what I was saying there, was that just noting Bailey Kerr's point, I was explaining that we are looking at the report format. We do provide a link within the reports already to the drawings on the applications, but we're looking to see if there's other ways that we can improve the information that's available for members.
Thank you, Bernard. I've another issue. When I spoke to you regarding calling us in, I was approached by 2 of the neighbours to this property who says that they never received notification, and I was told, well, it was sent. Whether it's sent or no, they're telling me that they never received notification of the application, and I'm not going to tell them that they're not telling the truth.
Well, we do send out neighbour notifications. That's sent out by the council through the Royal Mail. Now, these things aren't sent recorded delivery, so it goes from the council. They are sent out, and we have records of neighbour notifications being issued. So if they haven't received it, well, that's been a problem with the mail. But from our point of view, they have been sent.
I believe you. I'm just saying that these 2 people on both sides of that property, both of them says that they never received notification.
And I would also comment that people can comment on applications whether they've received a formal notification or not. And from what you're saying there, it sounds like they were aware of the application. The application's still under consideration. So even if they hadn't received a neighbour notification formally through the Royal Mail, they would have had opportunity to submit comments to the council for consideration.
I understand. I don't want to drag this on. No, everybody understands the planning side of the council's policies, and if I wasn't aware of how to do it, like I could go to my brother, and my brother wouldn't have a clue that if somebody was building, he could go in and have a look. So
Can I say,
I don't
can I
think
say
everybody's
Bailey,
the same.
maybe it's for
Yeah,
another
yeah,
time,
yeah,
another
yeah.
place.
Aye.
rather than
As I
carry
say,
on with this.
Convener, I didn't want to
Aye.
go on about
Thanks
it.
for that. Any other comment? Mr. Redmond, Councillor Red.
Thanks. I've fallen on a wee bit for Billy Kerr's points. What is the minimum width for an access road?
Is that me?
Yeah, that's perhaps one for the roads team to
Roads.
answer, but I don't have that answer.
Morning through yourself, Convener. The access roads is really dependent on a number of factors. Obviously, if we're discussing this application, Councillor Redmond, it's obviously private. It's not going to be adopted by the council. So there is 2.5 metres available for an access road. If we look at these parking spaces all provide 2.5 metre width. If you take a general SUV type car, they're less than 2 metres. So there is suitable access. The minimum width can go down below 3 metres, and that's something that we're looking at in some areas at the moment through our 20-mile-an-hour speed limit strategy. But in terms of private roads and households, there is no minimum because they're not adopted by the council.
Thanks, that's cleared that question up. The other question I had was, were any assessments made on potential noise disturbance or impact to the residential amenity, due to the nature of sometimes transient guest accommodation can come with a bit of people partying and be loud behaviour? What impact's been made to that?
No formal noise assessments or anything like that were carried out on the proposal. Consideration is always given to those sorts of aspects in terms of general amenity, whether or not the land use is compatible with surrounding land uses and so on and so forth. Ultimately, those sort of situations that you're mentioning there are more dealt with through sort of statutory nuisance legislation and noise complaints, essentially, if they come in at any one given time. What we've got here is essentially it's a short-term let use, but it's a residential unit essentially for that purposes, and that's consistent with the surrounding land uses in the area. Wouldn't anticipate there to be anything untoward or out of the unusual in this scenario here. What you see in terms of the drawings here as well has been amended from pre-application discussion stage, so there has been removal of any windows which were facing onto other properties at the back sides of the roofs and so on and so forth. So the most of the windows now face into the courtyard area as well. So that's about as far as we would take it at this point in time with this type of use that's proposed.
Oh, thanks. Just sort of probably along the same lines, but is there any enforceable conditions around the management of short-term lets, or it's just all, like you said, the council would just see them as residential units?
Conditions are these sorts of things can be difficult to predict what the potential issues might be. The Environmental Protection Unit were consulted on the application and didn't raise any concerns about noise or anything like that. So there's no suggested conditions there in terms of noise levels or anything like that. So again, it would come back to that aspect of if anything did arise at any time, it would need to be put into at that particular moment in time. Don't have any sort of standard conditions that we apply to short-term let units. It really depends on a site-by-site assessment each time.
Thanks. And then just my final question was, kind of leading on for the part, and I think it was mentioned that there might be some overspill onto the surrounding streets. How maybe times or whatever for the short-term lets of the HMO, there's 7 units, so there might potentially would be overspill. What sort of amount of overspill do you think that would be, and how do you, has there been an assessment of how the surrounding area can cope with that?
The key assessment is whether or not there is enough parking proposed within the curtilage of the application site. In this instance, as Roads have confirmed there's sufficient parking provided to meet the standards that are set out in the guidance and so on. You mentioned earlier about the width of the access road and so on, and it really depends on what size of vehicle is parked in there as to whether or not there's an obstruction caused that prevents somebody from being able to get by or anything like that. In considering the application and looking at the surrounding area, there is space within the Grahamsdyke Street itself for some on-street parking to be absorbed into the site. The site's also located within a sort of a central location close to sustainable transport links and public transport links and so on, and other parking areas as well. So I think from that basis, we would be content with the proposal on the basis that if there was a need for one or two cars to spill out onto the street, then that could be accommodated within the surrounding area.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bernard, I think you want to come in.
Thank you, Deputy. It was just on the point you were mentioning, Councillor Redmond, around HMOs and short-term lets. It was just to highlight that independently of any planning requirements, there's also licensing issues there as well. So there's license requirements, short-term lets and HMOs.
Any more questions to the officers? No, then we'll call on the deputation. Ms. Sumo, sorry, Councillor Anslow, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's again, as per Paley Carey, I asked it on the site, but it's just for transparency. What happens if one of the short lets happens to be disabled? What accommodation's been made for disabled parking for them?
Yeah, I think that's probably one for Gary's team and Roads, if possible.
Thanks, Kevin. Through yourself, convener. That's not something that the National Roads Development Guideline looks at within private properties, Councillor Anslow. So if there is a disabled requirement, obviously there is the parking requirements within the confines of the boundary of the property. Like the planning officer was noting that there was this requirement of 7 spaces, and they have been provided. So you know, in terms of providing disabled parking provision, these spaces have been designed to be larger than actual disabled persons parking bays. Sorry, if they were on the carriageway on street, so they would be suitable for disabled persons if they were to have to be utilised for that scenario, Councillor Anslow.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else now? Anybody I've missed? No, okay then. Can we ask Ms. Sumac and Mr. Haney please to come forward? Thank you. First of all, you've got 10 minutes to once you start. And could you just identify yourself and your positions, please?
Carolina Surmach, architect.
Jed Haney, planning consultant.
Thank you. Could you give us? Did you get the paperwork sent to you? You've had that from the council, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Could you start your?
Yeah. Good morning, Chair and Councillor. My name is Jed Haney. Sorry. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Chair and Councillors. My name is Jed Haney and I am a planning consultant based in Falkirk. My client has asked that I thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation today. It is proposed to use the property for short-term lets. From experience, it is anticipated most of the expected clients would be contractors working within the petrochemical industry. The property proposed is single-storey with pitched roofs. Again, it is worth highlighting the fact that the proposed building essentially sits within the footprint of the former buildings and the existing triple garage. The internal accommodation has been arranged to ensure all the daytime living spaces are positioned to minimise overlooking. Accommodation to be provided consists of 2 suites, 1 bedroom, kitchen, bathroom and living space. Each will have its own separate access. This concise presentation highlights the key planning benefits we believe justify approval of the application, and these can be categorised under the following headings: demand for type of accommodation proposed, sustainable location, minimal impact of proposed development, and economic benefits. I will take these matters in turn. Demand for proposed accommodation. From my clients' experience, it is anticipated most of the expected clients would be contractors working within the petrochemical industry. The properties would also be attractive to tourists visiting the many outstanding attractions located within Falkirk and its hinterland. Sustainable location. The subject site is located to the rear of number 112 Mary Street, Launceston. The area is characterised by a mix of stone tenements, commercial uses, houses and flats. The proposed property will be directly next to a bookmaker. The proposed use is ideally suited to a town centre location. The future occupiers of the proposed building will help support existing town centre uses, including cafes, convenience stores, pharmacy and a post office. Furthermore, in terms of sustainable transport, the site benefits from having easy access to public transport services and is also within walking distance of Falkirk Town Centre, embracing the key principles of sustainable development. It is also worth highlighting the proposals will bring back into use an otherwise disused piece of land. Minimum impact of proposed development. We have carefully considered the layout, design and height of the proposed buildings to minimise any visual impact the development may have. Constructive consultation with the planning case officer, Mr Brown, resulted in a very much scaled down, more subtle proposal, which is the subject of this application today. An existing large triple garage is situated on the site, and previously the site also contained another building. The proposals will create a distinctive yet sympathetic, modest development set within the existing urban context. The proposal's scale, massing and design fully respects the context within which it will sit, while creating a modern, sharp interpretation of a muse-type development. It is worth highlighting pertinent key points. As mentioned, the scale and massing of the proposal fully respects the existing urban fabric and in particular mirrors largely the footprint and profile of existing former garages and outbuildings which were and are located on the site. The proposals are designed in such a way to minimise the potential of overlooking and to protect the residential amenity of both existing nearby residents and future occupiers of the proposed development. There will be no significant impact on residential amenity currently enjoyed by occupiers adjacent to the proposals. The proposals included dedicated parking and turning areas within the site, allowing vehicles to enter and exit the site in a forward gear, providing sufficient parking for prospective occupiers. It is worth highlighting that because of the proposal, there will only be a maximum of 2 additional vehicles in the area, both of which will have dedicated parking space. And just touching on the comment that Councillor made earlier regarding parking space for disabled people, it is important to note that the parking bays will be allocated, so anyone who has a disability and needs a parking space who uses the proposal will be guaranteed a space. The type of use proposed is residential in character and is considered to fit well within the surrounding land uses. The residential character of the surrounding area will be enhanced by the proposal. Economic benefits. The building of the proposal will create additional construction jobs, including joiners, electricians and bricklayers. The ongoing operation of the proposal will create jobs for cleaners and maintenance personnel. The prospective occupiers of the proposed building will help support existing town centre uses, including cafes, restaurants and shops. Furthermore, the proposal will also support both key industries within the Falkirk area and the increasingly important tourist sector by providing additional accommodation within the Falkirk area. In conclusion, the proposals are wholly consistent with the relevant planning policies identified in the development plan, as evidenced in Mr Brown's comprehensive committee paper. The proposals are very modest in scale and do not raise any planning policy issues. There have been no objections to the proposal, and all internal council consultations have been positive. The proposals will make good use of this urban vacant brownfield site and will enhance the general amenity of the area. The proposal will, of course, provide much needed accommodation for contractors and tourists alike, who will contribute to the economy, supporting existing shops and other facilities. There will be no significant adverse impact on the residential amenity currently enjoyed by nearby commercial and residential neighbours. Given the above, it is safe to conclude the proposals, while modest in scale and impact, will make a positive contribution to the overall environment and fully accords with the development plan. We therefore respectfully request that this application be approved. We are happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Haney. Are there any questions coming? Mr Redmond. Councillor Redmond.
Thanks, that was a very informative presentation. You had said that there would only ever be a maximum of 2 spaces required for the development. How can you guarantee this? For example, if there was contractors maybe coming in, maybe 2 or 3 of them wanted to rent the units, eventually they could bring more cars. So would you be imposing a sort of occupancy limit or something on the short-term lets? Or?
The proposals as is provide only one bedroom. So there will only ever be one let, if you like, to relate to each property. There's 2 properties, so there's only ever be 2 vehicles. And in fact, from my personal experience, what you find with contractors is, say, they often work in shutdowns, for example, and they work in teams and they work together. And if you're coming, say, from Carlisle or Aberdeen, you tend to contact a colleague who's in that location and actually car share. So when I say we believe that there will only be a maximum of 2, quite often there may well only be 1 additional vehicle as a consequence of having the 2 units completed and full. Thank you.
And then just kind of unparting again, we obviously visited during the day from about the work, but could you speak a bit about the current sort of parking usage for the HMO? Does every one of the bedrooms have a car, or there are a lot of people within the HMO maybe use public transport?
At present, the parking, I think we would all agree, is somewhat well, it's unallocated and it's informal. What this proposal will do actually give a formality to the parking arrangements whereby people will have an allocated parking space so that there will be no ambiguity about where they're going, and it'll be much, much tidier. And yes, of course, given the location of the property being such a sustainable location, close to all public transport, etc., there's a likelihood that occupiers will utilise public transport as opposed to a private car.
Thank you.
Hazel Forrest.
Thanks. It's only just come to mind when you've been speaking about this, that most of your target area is going to be people from the petrochemical. I grew up in Grangemouth and I know what they do. Most of the people do not use cars. They use long wheelbase transits, etc. Other sorts are available. But using them, each of the sort of transits are about 1.5 times the size of a car. And that has just come to me just now, you know, that there would probably be difficulties with the parking, and that most of the people using like the long wheelbase vehicles would probably be parking out on Grimsdyke Street and may inadvertently cause traffic problems there. And I'm sorry for just bringing it up, but it's just struck me when you mentioned that they were in the petrochemical. Have you actually thought on that?
We have provided parking in accordance with what we were required to do in terms of regulations. It is a valid point that you make, and obviously contractors can have the use of larger vehicles like transits and that type of vehicle. A Ford Transit is similar in size to quite a lot of cars these days. The larger vehicles, I think, no matter what you do, they will have to be located somewhere. But we don't have any evidence to suggest the proportion of larger vehicles that would require different parking arrangements. And of course, that issue wouldn't arise if the properties are let to people who are tourists, for example. So I take your point. I think in reality, and this must be found right through the whole of the Falkirk area, if there's a larger vehicles, they will be parked somewhere in unrestricted parking.
It's just we have had HMOs before us in the past where parking was a difficulty, and it was only made worse by the fact that the target area was petrochemicals. Get the long wheelbase vehicles with ladders and you name it on top, and they'd certainly take up an awful lot more space. That was just one of the thoughts that came to me, and I'm afraid, sorry, it came to me as you started speaking.
Thank you, Councillor. That was a good point, actually. I never thought of that. Any other questions to deputation?
So just one point, so to follow on that point, obviously there's an existing property here, property which is under my client's control, and we have had no issues relating to that specific point. That's not to say that we can see what's going to happen in the future, but the evidence to date does not suggest there would be a major problem regarding that. Thank you.
Sorry, there was one application on this very road that was turned down because there wasn't sufficient parking. So that is why it clicked. Okay, thank you.
Thank you again, Councillor. Any further questions? Councillor Sinclair, sorry, I can't see your hand there.
It's all right, convener. Thanks for recognising that I've got my hand up. Just a brief question. We're touching on parking here. Can the deputation confirm how close this is to the local amenities? I know that there's a co-op nearby.
Who was that to there?
To the deputation, that I know that there's the local amenities nearby to the property. How close is it?
Yes, Councillor. It's almost, well, say immediately adjacent to an existing bookies. If you come round to the main street, I would estimate it would take about 2 minutes to 3 minutes to walk on the main street to Lauriston. And that obviously gives you access to the facilities there, including shops, cafes, etc., food takeaways, chip shops, and it's also got obviously the bus route into Falkirk and out.
Thanks. And just a follow up to that. So, would it be the case then that this particular site is also within short walking distance to the council car park that's located on James Street, which provides around about 20-25 parking spaces?
Correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Anyone else? If you're online, wave to me or something. Sometimes I don't see the hand that blends in with your background. Everybody. That's it. Okay, thank you. If that's all questions to deputation, thank you for it. And could you take your seat back in there?
Thank you.
Can we go back to Kevin? Because Kevin, any questions or
No, nothing from
nothing
myself.
at all? Thanks very much. So we'll go to debate now. Councillor Redmond.
Thanks. I think that's been quite an informative session there. And I think my kind of original concerns about parking have been met. We've heard a lot of detail. So I think I would move the officer's recommendation in full.
Kelly, okay.
Thanks, convener. I live in the area and I live close to that location. Some of the points that was raised or concerns raised by colleagues on the committee regarding noise, where I've had the HMO, because I'm in hearing distance, I didn't hear any noise. I didn't see much parking going round the back. Most of the people, and I've spoke to a guy who on Sunday who was using it, the HMO, and he's used the amenities. He was in the pub, and he goes to different areas in Falkirk. A lot of them use the parking out the front. I didn't see a lot of them used at the back. However, the parking's there. That was my concern when I brought it forward to committee, that there wasn't sufficient parking. But Kevin's highlighted that meets the requirements. With regards to Councillor Sinclair saying about the parking across the road, try going there at 6 o'clock at night and try and get a parking space is very difficult. Because sometimes I need to try and park there. But my concerns have been addressed. And I think, like what I said at the very start, if I would have been able to see the drawings and the proposal, maybe wouldn't have been at this stage. So I'm quite happy to second Councillor Redmond's proposal.
Thanks, Billy Kerr. Provost, did you?
You know, I think it's a good application. I think it'll use a space that's been out of use for a while, and it'll bring economic development and jobs. And I had concerns about the parking as well, but they've been addressed, so I'm happy to support the application as well.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone against the motion? We have a motion and we have a seconder. No? So we agree the motion? Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. We move on to item 5, change of use of outbuilding to beauty therapy salon and store at 65 Shannon Drive, Falkirk, for Mrs. Lisa Edmondson, P240577 FUL. And we have a deputation again request for this item from Mr. Ronan McGirr and Lisa Edmondson. Are we happy to hear the delegation? Great. Thank you. Okay, and Catherine Chorley will present this report. Catherine.
Thanks, convener. Jim, please could you show the location plan for me? Thank you. I'm aware that you will have all read the report, so I'll just go through the brief details. The applicant is proposing to use part of the building in the back garden for a Class 1A use. There's a couple of important points to that one. Oh, zoom in. Please could you zoom in? There's a few sort of relevant planning principles to bear in mind in determining this application. They have to be assessed on the proposed use class. So although the applicant is proposing to use it as a beauty salon, you have to bear in mind that the application is for a Class 1A use and not limited within that class. So that means that the proposal could eventually become a shop, a financial service, professional service, or other similar service. And that's really what you're determining the application on. Also, the permission goes with the land, not the applicant. So it may be that the applicant applies for planning permission, but someone else could take on the building and use it in a different way in the future. So there are a number of policies that we've listed in the report which the commercial use would conflict with, and that's particularly looking at those associated with parking and access and impact on neighbouring properties in terms of their amenity and disturbance. You can see there on the location plan that 5 parking spaces are proposed on the frontage. 1 is shown in the garage, but we have an exemption for parking in the garage. We don't include that as parking provision. The access to the site is in the top right-hand corner of that, and you can see that there would be a lot of vehicle movements involved in getting those cars in and out of the site. 1 car will have to reverse out of the site in order for another one to get out of the site. So our concerns are that that is going to lead to dangerous vehicle movements on that corner of the road. Jim, would you be able to zoom into the plan in the top right-hand corner? And the location plan just gives you a bit of context to what's around the site. So the site is on a bend. There's 2 junctions near it. To the north is a block of flats, and to the west is a school with a car park adjacent to it. So our concerns are that there's a real risk that these additional vehicle movements throughout the day could impact on road safety. But also you've got people coming backwards and forwards accessing the rear of the site in what is already quite a tight property, which will cause disturbance to neighbouring properties. We did give consideration to whether we could condition the permission, whether we could control it that way, but there's a circular that gives guidance on conditions, and that's set out in the report, and that goes into a bit of detail about why we didn't think conditions were appropriate to control the use in this case. So our concerns are that the proposal would cause disturbance to neighbouring properties and road safety issues, and we have to bear in mind that although this proposal is for a beauty salon, it could be used for many other uses within the same class. You need to be considering that in your decision. That's it from me. Thank you.
Before we lose that, could you just tell us directly opposite, above the site, the funny shaped building, is that the school?
So the school is to the left of Teviot Street.
Oh, the big one?
The T-shaped building is a block of flats.
Right, thank you.
Any other questions to Jack?
It was just on the Class 1A use, and it was obviously you've cited that it could be sort of unrestricted nature. It could be an estate agent. It could turn into a shop in future. Change to any sort of shop in future. Is that, are we maybe being overly harsh there on the applicant? Because as here it says, obviously the estate agents and funeral directors has been used as a justification for refusal, but Planning Circular 4/1998 warns against refusing permission based on theoretical future uses without evidence of harm. So should we not just judge it on the proposed use rather than theoretically what it could be used for in future? And could you maybe expand a wee bit on, you had talked about, could I put conditions in to say it's limited to a hair salon, but then you were saying that it would be best not to do that. Could you expand a wee bit on that? Well, sorry, I've asked 2 questions.
Yeah, I might need reminding of one of them. In terms of the second one, if you put a condition on saying it can only be used as a hairdresser, is that the limit of what they do? What if they do a little bit of something else? Perhaps they do nails or massages. perhaps they expand it into other things, it's very difficult to control. Saying a hairdresser's might be acceptable, but a beauty salon wouldn't. There's no restriction on how many people can access the building or how many staff could work there. You could end up with a situation, obviously it's all hypothetical, but you could end up with a situation where you have 2 staff working at the same time, and that wouldn't be controlled because it was a condition as it being a hairdresser's or a beauty salon. And the first question, I might need to go back to that
It
one.
was about, we're talking about theoretical future uses. Is it harsh? We don't judge things on the application as it comes forward rather than theoretically what could happen 10, 20 years down the line.
Yeah, that's understandable, and certainly we looked at that and we went back through the circular on conditions, and you just don't have that support in that circular or in case law really, which allows for that. You have to consider it on the basis of the use class that it's going to be within.
And then on the house already, it's got quite a large parking area at the front. What would be the parking demand for the house itself?
I think we were looking at 3 parking spaces, 2 or 3, but Gary can perhaps speak to that better than me.
Thanks, Catherine. Through yourself, convener. Yeah, the planning officer's correct. It would be 3.
And then, for a Class 1A, what sort of demand would you be looking at?
Let Gary answer that one as well.
Again, through yourself, convener. That's an additional 3, Councillor Redmond. So, in terms of a Class 1A property against our National Roads Development Guidelines, we would be looking for an additional 3 parking spaces for this planning application, which would not include a garage, which has obviously been highlighted within the application.
Thanks. And then I'll kind of just the last couple of questions, but a Class 1A, what size could that go up to? Could we be talking a large shop here, or is a Class 1A a small shop? What's the sort of maximum? Is there a size a shop gets to and then it becomes larger than a Class 1A?
No, is the simple answer to that. It could be any size, it could be a Class 1A shop. If it's a shop, if that's the way it's used, then the floor area is relevant to that.
Right. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thanks, Councillor. Any more questions?
Yep. Thank you. Yep. Thank you, convener. You've probably touched on part of this, but there's three questions. First of all, it says change of use. So my first part of the question is, what is it currently used as?
It's currently a garden building in a dwelling house. So it's a change of use of part of that garden building and that dwelling house.
Right, so it's just a garden building.
Yeah, within
Okay.
a
And regarding that then, is the permission, because it's part of that building that's going to be used as for this purpose, is the planning permission restricted to the size of the part that's given? So in other words, the planning permission was given, could it then extend at a future date to a bigger space within the garden building?
They would need planning permission to do that,
They'd have to come back.
extend into the rest of the garden building.
Okay, and then my final question really, in terms of that location, that street and neighbouring streets, are you aware of any similar situations where outbuildings are used for business? Or is this the first in this particular area?
I'm not aware of any that come to us.
So as far as I'm aware, it's the first. Okay, thank you, convener.
Thank you. Councillor Bowes?
I'm sorry to keep going on about parking, but we might as well explore it. So I understand that for the house, there's 3 parking spaces required. That's what Gary said for the house. The garage, I'm assuming, then would be counted with the house, although you need the extra 3 for having the Class 1A unit there. I'm presuming that's why it's probably showing on the drawing. No, so do you need 6 places for the Class 1A, or does the house not get counted? Does the garage not get counted for the house? I've got other questions after, but deal with that one first.
We don't include garages in our calculations. We have the National Roads Design Guidance, which has sort of exclusions that councils can add, and for us, we have excluded that. And maybe Gary can explain in a bit more detail why that is. So we would look for 6 parking spaces, not including the garage.
Thank you.
Sorry, I thought Gary was coming in there.
Yeah, happy to come in, convener. Just to clarify the planning officer's point. So yes, at this moment in time, Councillor Bowes, there is adequate parking for the property that is there currently. So the 3-bedroom house. There is obviously a garage in situ, which we would not count as parking provision in any planning application. And we did that previously with our own Falkirk Council Roads Development Guidelines, as we all know that garages don't always equate to a parking provision. They can be turned into a number of things, obviously storage being a major factor. So we, as a council, and a number of councils throughout the country do not count garages as being included within a parking provision. So we would be looking in total for 6 parking spaces within the property, not including the garage.
Okay, thanks for that. That makes that really clear. And it's probably right, because I probably use my own garage for the same thing as a storage area. So my only other question is, when you look at the streets roundabout, is it all unrestricted parking in the streets around about that area? And therefore, would some of that unrestricted parking, would that take up the amount, rather than it all being off the street?
I don't know, and maybe Gary can answer that point, but I would say if you want to have a look at the location plan, you can see it's on a bend. So there's going to be certain areas around the site which you shouldn't be parking on anyway, whether they're restricted or not, but maybe Gary has some comments on that.
Yeah, through yourself, convener, happy to share a bit of knowledge of the area. So obviously there is a primary school directly to the northwest of the property, where there is on the northwest side at the primary school, there's school keep clears. So obviously that there's parking not available there. And then on the south side at the property side, there is double yellow lines for a number kind of properties around that corner. There is obviously residential parking provision further on. You know, there's access protection markings for driveways, but there is large areas where parking vehicles can be accommodated on the carriageway, to be honest. However, you know, that comes over and above the requirements that we're asking for within the property curtilage.
Thank you.
Mr. Forrest?
Another one for Gary. Gary, is this, you've just said the keep clear space at the school, but we all know what the schools are like. Very rarely is the keep clear adhered to. Do you have a number of complaints about parking near the school?
Through yourself, convener, in Bintasken Primary School, it's not one that springs to mind, to be honest. I know that there's a fairly large off-street car park to the south of the school, which I would assume is potentially utilised for pick up and drop off in the area. Obviously, it's in a largely residential area, so a lot of the children and parents would likely walk to school as well, knowing the area a wee bit. So it's not one that comes to mind as one of the areas that we get regular complaints on, Councillor Forrest, to be honest.
Thank you.
Mr. Bailey.
Thanks, convener. Probably directed at Gary. Gary, I've just got it up on Google Maps. This property, it looks as if it's an ex-council house. Why are we putting a limit of cars to a house? Would we do that with a normal council house?
Through yourself, convener, so Bailey Kerr, when there's a planning application in, we need to look at it at the current standards, so our National Roads Development Guidelines. So I totally take on board what you're saying, ex-local authority property, likely, but we need to review that in terms of current standards, so with our parking that we've got at the moment against the National Roads Development Guidelines.
Right, okay, thank you. So similar to the last, and I know every application is is taking its own merit. So, thinking about the last application where it was suggested that they can use off-street parking, has that been taken into consideration regarding this application? And it's either you or Catherine.
I'm happy to answer that, convener. So, in terms of off-street or off-site parking, Bailey Care, that's not something that we consider, to be honest. We would potentially note that in a planning application response. However, it's not something that we would consider against our standards that we use to define what's required within a property curtilage. So, like for instance, if we had a property that was getting built next to a large Falkirk Council free car park, we wouldn't take that into consideration. You know, we need to take the site boundary into consideration and that red line boundary of the site and make sure that there's parking provision against the standard within that property curtilage. We obviously, as a planning committee, you know, yourselves as elected members can take that into consideration, but we need to take into the fact that potentially that car park could be sold down the line. There are various amount of factors that could be included in that in the future, so we need to take into that red line boundary into that property application and just fully look at that, to be honest.
Thanks, Gary. There was just so much in the previous one that parking off-site, and I think most people were happy with that. So I was just asking, and you've answered the question. I was just asking if somebody parking on the street would be supported or no supported. That was all. So thank you.
Thanks, Billy. I'll go to online now. First, Councillor Colley, and then Councillor Sinclair.
Thank you, convener. I had the question around the off-street parking, so on-street parking, so it had already been covered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sinclair.
It's probably just it's more a question on road safety rather than parking. I think one of the comments that was made by, I think it was Catherine, on vehicle movements. I wonder if she could expand on that and give a bit of clarification on what was meant by vehicle movements, not necessarily parking.
Jim, would you mind showing the location? So you can see that's the site there with the proposed parking layout on the frontage. The access to the site is really in front of parking space number 1, and the access doesn't run the full width of the property. So you are coming in and out of that driveway to get into the site. And I think if you were trying to access parking spaces 5 and 6, I think it is, the ones closest to 67, you couldn't do that without other vehicles moving in and out of the site, and that's on a bend close to junctions, close to the school. The risk is that you're requiring people to reverse out onto the road, more vehicle movements in that location is a concern. I don't know if Gary has anything else to add.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Through yourself, convener, one area within the National Road Development Guideline does obviously highlight servicing and parking provision, and it does state that vehicles entering or leaving the public road should do so in a forward gear and not reverse on the public gear, obviously for road safety purposes.
So just to confirm, there's no changes proposed here to the access arrangements for this site.
That's correct.
Okay. Right. Nothing more for the moment. I'll maybe come back in.
Thanks, Councillor. Any other questions to Catherine or Rhodes? If not, can we bring the deputation, Mr. McGirr and Miss Edmondson, forward, please? Good morning, welcome. Can I first ask you to identify yourself?
My name is Ronan McGurr, architect with Fine Designs and agent for this application.
Thank you. So,
I'm Lisa Edmondson.
thank you. You'll have 10 minutes to give your presentation, 10 minutes between you, and you can start whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Chair. There we go. Good morning, Chair and councillors, and thanks for the opportunity to be able to explain the situation here. I have a photographic presentation of parking in this area. Mrs. Edmondson has run a beauty salon. It's not a hair salon, it's a beauty salon for 20 years now in the town centre. And to be quite honest, it's as simple as she wants to ease off a bit in her business, and she effectively wants to run a part-time small business for herself. The business that she's run for 20 years, she's just a one-person business. She doesn't employ anyone, it's just herself. She lives at 65 Shannon Drive. There we are. She's been there for 14 years, and it's a corner site. And because of the corner site, it's a larger site than the normal site in that area. The advantage of this, it's a more spacious site, and previously they built a large outbuilding. And all Lisa is trying to do here is to simply use part of that existing building as a beauty salon for 3 or 4 days a week, seeing no more than 3 or 4 clients a day. The fact that it's been, taken as a Class 1A commercial use is, and I've said it from day one, I've said it to planners from day one, this is overkill. I understand why they have to classify it as something, but this is a part-time business at the back of a house, and it just seems overkill. I think the requirement for 3 spaces is overkill. But let's look at the parking. Let's look at the site for what it is. So image 1 here. Here's the front of the house, and it's actually a dual access driveway. So these are existing accesses on both sides, and there's 2 car parks, two cars sitting in the driveway right now. But there's plenty of parking there. Next slide. And so here's, again, just another image of, it's a very spacious driveway for a domestic house. Plenty of room for 3 cars. I'm showing 4 there, and the garage. I understand why planning have their argument against using a garage as a car park space, but the fact is it is a garage, and there's 4 spaces there quite comfortably, and it is a dual access driveway. Next image. And then every time I've been to site for whatever reasons, to take my survey, to do whatever I need to do there, I've never had trouble parking off-site on Teviot Street. There's a rather large car park there, not 50 metres away from the house. That image on Google Maps shows it pretty full. I don't think I've ever been there, and it's had more than half a dozen cars sitting in the car park. So there's loads of car park spacing around this off-street parking and the driveway. But it brings me back to, is there another image? Is that it? Aye, there's Teviot Street, and that's normally what I find anytime I'm going along Teviot Street. Is there another image? Yeah, I mean, it just brings me back to this application seems to be being considered as it's going to be a shop on a high street. It's not. This is a woman who's run a one-person beauty salon for 20 years. She knows what she's doing. And when she tells me that I'll only see 3 or 4 clients a day, there'll only ever be one person needing to park a car. I mean, that site can easily accommodate 1 car park space. And there's no reason why it couldn't. And I just think, considering this application as a shop that could be anything from an undertaker's to whatever I'm heard today, to me is it's stretching really what this application is about, and it's about a small part-time business, 3 to 4 days a week, 1 staff member, and 2 to 3 people, 4 people at most coming to site during the day. I just find the classification difficult to compare with the reality. And there's plenty of parking around this area, and she can accommodate easily 1, if not 2, additional spaces if it need be, but it's not required. And here's the building. It's a rather large outbuilding. She just wants to curtail a portion to the front, which is more than adequate for her needs, which is just beauty salon treatments. That's it. Is there another image, or is that it? And this back to site again. Really, that's all I needed. I think I just want to put across that it's just a much smaller development than the classification would seem to suggest. And we have never suggested that we want to do anything more than that. And if you want to ask Lisa, she'll definitely tell you that's all she wants to do. It's just a 1-person, 3 to 4 days a week, part-time business. Very little parking required, and whatever parking is required will easily be accommodated on site. I think that's all I need to say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miga. Is there anything you want to say, Lisa?
Just the same as what Ronan said, yeah. Yeah, and I can't physically do any more than 1 customer at a time. Like I say, I've been there for 20 years plus, you know. I've done it since I was 16. I'm not planning on doing anything else. I couldn't do anything else now. I'm not qualified to do anything else. And if I do get it, then I'll be staying where I am to continue my business.
Super. Thanks very much for that. And we'll now go to questions from the committee. Are there any questions? Concerns?
Mr. McGurr, I 1.2 of the description of the proposal, and it says the applicant proposes the building 3 to 4 days a week with 6 customers a day. 3 times you've said 3 to 4.
Pardon me. Yeah, I sort of got it was 3 to 4 days a week. She would be having the business running for, and yes, up to 6 people. Yeah, sorry, that's right. Sorry, pardon me. I got confused with the numbers. Pardon me. I'm sorry, but how long do the treatments take?
It depends on what treatments I have booked in for how long each treatment will take.
Like an hour.
It could be an hour, could be longer, could be shorter. It just really depends on what I've got booked in.
Okay. Right. It just seems a very, very modest number of customers, you know, over the week. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Redmond.
Thanks. That was a great reputation. It's dead handy to have the pictures there. Pictures tell 1,000 words, so yeah, that was really good. I suppose my questions would be, firstly, on the size of the actual salon itself. Obviously, there's concerns that potentially in future it could be used for, I think one of the examples was it could be used for nail appointments as well. I don't know if you want to get the drawing back up actually, but how large is the salon? How many people could potentially work there at the one time?
Oh, sorry, just myself. I do massage and things like that as well, so I wouldn't have anybody just coming in and out. As the salon I've got at the moment, people can just come in and out as they please. This won't be happening. I won't be putting my address on social media or on the internet, anything like that. It'll be appointment only. And if anybody needs vouchers, I can post them out. I can do emails. I can post them. They can, arrange a time to get them and things like that. So it will just be whoever I've got booked in, that will be who's there. And I'll leave time in between. And also as well with the school concern, I don't start till 10 o'clock in the morning. I don't even like to go home at school times. I stay away. So probably it'll be about 2:45 at the earliest and 3:15 for any appointments before and after that. I wouldn't have people coming in at school times because it is just too busy. And then once the school's out, there's nobody there. It's empty. It's really quiet. Yeah.
Thanks. And then you be happy if, it's been spoke about, but would you be happy if a condition was put on it limiting the use to a beauty salon? That suit you?
What do you mean, just to have the building just as a beauty salon?
If the building had a condition on it and it said, this
Yeah,
is
of course.
designated.
Yeah. That's all I've done all my life, and that's all I'm intending on doing for the rest of it. So, yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the deputation? Provost?
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for the deputation. So you've been in the high street for quite some time?
I'm actually in Grangemouth at the moment.
Grangemouth?
Yeah.
You've done it, so you would probably take your clients with you?
Well, the majority of them, a lot of people can't come with me. So I'm just happy enough as long as I can cover kind of, what I need to cover. I'm quite happy.
So definitely it'd be one
Yes,
client at a time.
yes.
So
I have
and
got a
some
room.
clients might just get dropped off, even they might not even have a car.
Sometimes they don't have a car. Yeah, some of them have to get buses and walk. So I'm having to kind of tell them, where to go and things like that. Can't remember what I was going to say there. It's right out of my head.
So you're just looking to kind of reduce your hours, if you like,
Yes,
because you've been doing it for quite some
Yeah, I
time.
had quite a hard year last year, and it changed a lot in my life. So that's why I'm doing it.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay.
Okay.
Could
Mr.
I ask
Forrest?
One more. Sorry, could you give us a rundown of the hours? You said
It would be about 10 till 5.
10 till 5.
Yeah, between the hours. But obviously not in school times. I'll just make sure that I've got a kind of half an hour gap in between sort of 2:45 and 3:15.
Right, okay.
Okay.
No one else, sorry? Oh, Councillor Colley, sorry. Yeah, you're going to have to jump up and down, I think.
I did some waving. Thank you, Convener. It's just a question around the sort of number of clients, and I wondered if the applicant could maybe describe how long it would take to do sort of an average cut colour foils, how long that would take. I'm just sort of thinking about the number of clients you would actually see.
It's beauty therapy that I'm doing. It's not hairdressing. So an average treatment would probably be about an hour and a half.
That's helpful, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no one else has to jump up and down to attract my attention? No? Okay. Thanks very much for your deputation. If you'd like to take your seat again. Okay, can we go back to the officer, please, Kathleen?
Thanks, Convener. There's a number of points to pick up from that presentation. The photographs showed a second access within the site. That's new. That doesn't have permission. There's no minor roadworks consent in place. It's over double yellow lines and it's on a corner. It's not an authorised access. That wasn't part of the original application. That's something to consider. The discussion about hours, staff numbers, customer numbers, how long a customer is there for, how many customers are there in a day, how many staff are there, cannot be controlled through the planning process. We are not in a position to restrict that in any way. We just cannot put a condition on that limits those matters. So perhaps it would be 6 customers a day for this individual, or the business might expand and it would be more. You need to bear in mind that we can't restrict it to this applicant and the way the applicant proposes to run the business. It's also not appropriate for us to use a condition to restrict it to a beauty therapy business. And that's made clear in the conditions. Maybe Donald might want to come in on that point, but otherwise that's it from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Donald?
Yes, thank you, Convener. Yes, I've been listening to the debate, and what Catherine said is that through the debate, there's a lot of things we could not reasonably control through the planning condition, which has this pass a number of tests, which I always have trouble remembering, but they have to be reasonable, proportionate, related to planning and key is enforceable. So when Catherine says restricting the hours to say between 10 and 5, avoiding school times, you could well have, for whatever reason, there's a client here till 5:30, a neighbour objects to it, but we can't really enforce that. It's not a reasonable conditions, nor can we control the number of clients. It's a difficult one. I agree with what it says in the report, and I agree with what Catherine says. But if members were moving towards a mind of to grant permission, I think we should be looking at restricting the use. It might take a little bit of time for us to think through the exact wording of it, think through it, but it might be something along the lines of that the permission shall inure for the benefit of the applicant only and shall be used for no other purpose other than a beauty salon. If that's the way that members are going, I think Councillor Redmond was kind of heading in that direction.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Redmond.
It was just around policy. Obviously, we've put this as a class 1A, but it was a policy 26, which is a business and industry national. It's about supporting home working and micro businesses. So I suppose that the applicants may be arguing that this is class 1's too stringent. What potential policies do we have in place where we could see this as a micro business or home working rather than class 1A?
Catherine.
There's some situations where people do run businesses from home, and generally they will be very small scale and don't require an application for planning permission. They might be ancillary uses. Perhaps you could have an office use that might need planning permission, but was limited in who was coming and how and why. But if it's in the same use class as a class 1A use, then you're assessing the same principles.
Thank you. No, that's all my questions for now. Thanks.
Councillor Bowes.
Thank you. And I welcome Donald's intervention. I think it possibly gives us a reasonable common sense way forward. Obviously, it has to be acceptable to the applicant as well. And that the way you were talking about how it would be restricted is the wrong word, but determined, and it would be purely to the applicant herself and for the specific use. I see that as a really pragmatic way of going forward. Maybe have a wee thought on that whilst the rest of the debate's going on. Is it probably may come back and see if we can develop how the wording of that can be formed.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Any other questions? Sorry. Oh. Councillor Sinclair again, please.
Thanks, convener. I'll be honest. My initial concerns around about this was the movement of vehicles around about a school area. So not only is it one school, it's actually three. You've got Buntaskin Primary, Windsor Park, and Falkirk High School that sits to the back of the playing fields. So, however, on listening to the deputation and listening to both the architect and the applicant herself, I think I'm content to, in my own mind, that this is, and I get the planning considerations that have gone into this, and I think we are bound by what the planning regulations suggest. But I think on this occasion, it makes sense, as Councillor Bowes and both Councillor Redmond have kind of alluded to, that there seems to be a pragmatic way forward that we can go on this. And I think that's where I'm now minded to go with this. I don't, for the, I trust in what I've been told today that the business will go in the way it is, and it will be limited to what it can do based on what the applicant has said to us today. So I think I would be more minded towards a pragmatic solution for this instance. on the basis that it has the limited impact that the applicant and agent have both told us today.
Thanks, Councillor. I think we've actually moved into debate rather than questions for the officers. So anyone else want to make a contribution at this point?
Just an observation, a comment really. I don't think the applicant has any plans to expand, given she's already run a business for 20 years in Grangemouth, clearly trying to reduce her hours in the week and just manage her life. So I wouldn't envisage a big expansion or anything like that. I think the business will be contained as it is, but I would agree with what others have said. If we could find a way forward based around what Donald says, I'd be quite happy with that.
Thanks, Provost. Anyone else? Nobody jumping up and down? No? Okay. I'll give you over to Mr. Henderson, the legal rep.
Thank you, Convener. I think as maybe a starting point, I think we've discussed a great degree of length the issues around parking and so on, and the potential for a condition which I think, from my recollection of the circular, is in exceptional circumstances. It may be that the committee would consider that they are exceptional circumstances. I think there's almost a sort of initial step as well that am I taking it that the committee is satisfied with the design scale, massing, etc. of the proposal, and it's satisfied on matters of parking and road safety for the proposed use as a beauty salon and store. But then moving forward, I think my take on things is there was a view to have a condition, and I've been scribbling things down, so I'll see if this makes any sense to the committee and other officers, and hopefully you can hear me. So am I still audible? Thank you, Councillor Sinclair, for nodding there, because I do tend to move my head a little bit. But I was wondering if it would be something like the Director of Police Services would be authorised to grant planning permission subject such conditions as are considered appropriate to the Director, and then specifically saying including a condition to restrict, a condition that I went sideways, a condition that the permission inures for the benefit of the applicant only, and to restrict future changes of use which would otherwise be allowed by the use classes order, so as to restrict use to that of a beauty therapy salon and store. And my understanding is that that's in order to prevent the generation of an unacceptable level of additional traffic and parking and an unacceptable adverse impact on the residential amenity of the area by a potential change of use. Does that sound kind of broadly what I think officers and members may have in mind, Councillor Sinclair?
I would just like to say that that's exactly how it was captured, Mr. Henderson. And I don't know if anybody else would like to make that proposal, or but I would make that what you says as a proposal. If somebody else wanted to do it, they can do it. I would just formally put it forward.
Okay, happy to second that proposal.
Anyone other comments or anyone other wise-minded? Councillor Forrest.
Aye, thanks. I would be minded to agree with that. The one thing that still concerns me is something that Catherine said. In her summary, was that the second exit from that drive was it wasn't supposed to be there. And that, judging from my experience in driving, a second exit right at a junction is pretty scary, actually. And it was just when Catherine brought it up there, I thought I better say, yeah, I agree with that. It is a thing that concerns me, and I know that it doesn't actually concern this application for the salon. It's something that worries me a wee bit.
Thanks, Councillor. I think that will be noted by the planning department that there is it's an illegal entry exit, but it doesn't really affect this part. I think Councillor Sinclair, you have something to add?
It was just purely for clarification basis, convener, and it's probably a question more for Mr. Henderson than anybody else. As part of the conditions on the because my concern is limited to the beauty therapy salon part. There may be administrative duties or accounting duties that are required as part of the business that may happen within that part of the property. So I wonder if, I don't know if an addition of and appropriate business activities relating to the therapy salon could be included in that, because I mean, I'm not speaking for the applicant because I don't know them in any way, shape or form, but it may seem you know, a reasonable thing to assume that some of those practices would be done in the beauty salon rather than a home office, for example, or if there's a part of the beauty salon that is geared up for doing those kinds of activities. I hope I'm making sense and not rambling my usual waffle.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, Councillor Sinclair. It's a good question, and I think subject to any adverse comments from my planning colleagues on my thoughts on wording, we could perhaps have something in the wording along the lines of beauty therapy salon and store and ancillary uses to that.
Yeah, I suppose so long as it was related to the business of the beauty therapy salon, I think I would be content with that.
Okay then, are we all happy with that? Are there any objections to the motion? Sorry.
Thank you, convener. Just I think summarising, I think the discussion has been, and I think what Bailey, Kerr and Provost Bissett have moved, and I appreciate there's some preface wording that I would typically, you would have heard me reading out, but please bear with me. The committee, having considered the officer's report, the development plan and material considerations, and having exercised its planning judgment, agrees to grant planning permission as it considers that the following material considerations are material and of such weight as to indicate that the development plan should not be accorded priority. Number one would be the committee is satisfied as to the design, size and scale of the development. The second one would be that the committee is satisfied as to parking for the proposed use as a beauty salon and store and ancillary uses. And thirdly, the committee is satisfied as to road traffic and road safety considerations in the vicinity for the proposed use as a beauty salon and store and ancillary uses. And then that the Director of Police Services shall be authorised to grant planning permission subject to such conditions are considered appropriate to the Director, including a condition that the permission inures for the benefit of the applicant only, and to restrict future changes of use which would otherwise be allowed by the use classes orders, so as to restrict use to that of a beauty therapy salon and store and ancillary uses to that, in order to prevent the generation of an unacceptable level of additional traffic and parking and unacceptable adverse impact on the residential amenity of the area. So I think that was my note of matters.
Thank you. Does the planning have any objections to that change? Anything particular?
I think Ian articulated it very well.
Thank you. Well done. Anyone else? So it's agreed. Agreed. Thank you.
Convener?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to have to submit apologies for the last part of this meeting, so I'm going to have to leave
Right.
now. Thank you.
Thanks, councillor. If we move on to the final item, which is item 6, Falkirk Council on-street parking space for disabled persons, various streets order 26 TRO DB 024048. And Craig Russell will, Craig's, it's Gary, sorry.
Thanks, Convener. Craig's got much more here than me. So the report before you this morning concerns an application for a disabled person's parking space on Glencairn Street in Camelon. In terms of the council scheme of delegation, the decision requires to be made at committee as there is one unresolved objection made to the order. In terms of the relevant legislation, the authority requires to consider all objections made and not withdrawn before making the order. An application was received by a qualifying person and a suitable location was identified for the space, which is shown on page 79 of your report. One objection was received and responded to, which is detailed on pages 81 and 82. The objections have not been removed, hence the report being placed before you. Happy to take any questions, Convener.
Thank you. Any questions? Billy?
Thanks, Convener. Gary, I've asked this question on a few occasions. If we have objections and we know it's going to come to the committee, why do we go and put the parking bay in before the decision's made?
So
if decide to move, we then need to go and take that away, then do it again. Just time and money. But there will be a legal reason, I know that. Just if you can explain it, please.
Of course, Bailey Kerr, through yourself, Convener. So, as a long-standing member of the planning committee, you might remember when we used the old regulations and standards, Bailey Kerr. So, what used to happen was the disabled persons parking spaces had to go through the full traffic regulation order first, which included a consultation period. So this could take up to 9 months, 12 months, depending on when the planning committee could meet and if the number of objections that were had. This legislation changed, and unfortunately I can't remember a date off the top of my head, but the legislation changed nationally. So what happens now is an advisory bay is marked on site to accommodate the disabled person and allow them to park outside their property or near their property, as is the requirement. And thereafter we go through the traffic regulation order, so we go through the consultation period. And then obviously like this morning, if there is any unresolved objections that come to yourselves, the planning committee to make a decision on that. Obviously if there's no decision can be made, the reporter can then be progressed in terms of moving forward and making a decision. But that's the national legislation. Bailey Kerr is that now an advisory bay is always lined on street first and foremost, and then we go through the consultation period for a traffic regulation order.
Thanks, Gary. Gary, in the report it mentions about the applicant contacting the Roads Department and understanding that it's going to might cause them a problem because it's in front of their driveway. Has that been taken into consideration with regards to the objection?
So through yourself, Convener, obviously you're not on the objection that was received in June last year, Bailey Kerr. So we have not received, to my knowledge, any further correspondence from the applicant themselves. So what it is a bit of a strange one. I'll be honest with you, it's not something that we do or we have done recently that I'm aware of. But after some research, other local authorities in Scotland have placed disabled persons parking spaces over driveways. So the driveway to this property at 22 Glen Cairn Street in Cairnland is very narrow. At the moment, there is a, for lack of better words at this moment in time, a broken down vehicle in this driveway. And the other aspect to cover is that the applicant's vehicle that has the blue badge registered to it is too large to fit into the driveway itself, and it currently parks on street where the advisory bay has been marked. We have taken into consideration there is obviously a parking bay on street outside the properties on the even side of that street in Glencairn Street. And we have taken into consideration that that's where the car currently parks, and that allows accommodation of other vehicles on that street within the parking bay that's already there. If we were to move it to the north, as it were, and move it away from the driveway, that would potentially remove an on-street parking space within the current lay-by.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
Councillor Redmond.
Just looking at the map and on the back pages here, the disabled space that's proposed, is that within? That looks like a sort of in-shot for parking. So is it already, even if it wasn't a disabled space, it would still be within existing parking bays, really?
Through yourself, Councillor Redmond, that is correct. And if I'm able to do so, I'll just quickly share my screen to show you that, if that's okay. So you'll see that you should be able to see the property here. There's a silver car in the driveway currently. Obviously Google Street View is 2009, it's 16 years ago. But currently the car parks right in here in the kind of lay-by off street. And just for noting, I am not looking to go to the big kids circus. I am currently doing the structural calculations for that for our building standards at the moment.
That was brilliant. Thanks. That was just a bit scary. You said 2009 was 16 years ago. I think that's it. And the objector said he'd attach pictures, but you showed us that anyway. So I think that's all the questions for me.
Gary Kerr.
Just a follow-up questions for Councillor Redmond there. Gary, so what the applicant is looking for is a bay in the parking area?
Through yourself, computer, that's correct, Billy Kerr, yeah. Which is still part of the public adopted road.
Yeah. So see in the visual picture you put up there, there was, it looked like monoblock outside the driveway. Is that where the proposed application is for?
Yes, that's correct, Billy Kerr.
Right, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Anyone else? Councillor Bowes.
Yeah. Sorry, Gary, coming back to you again. I know it's, when you tell me you're putting in a parking bay and it's going over a driveway, it does sound a bit mad, to be honest with you. But if I remember rightly, the rules are if that person leaves the house, then the parking bay actually can be lifted then, can't it? So it won't be there forever and a day.
So through yourself, convener, Councillor Bowes, that's correct. So we have the ability to carry out what's called a revocation of a disabled parking space. So what we would do is, if that person was to leave their property, just like any other property, they would potentially request a revocation of the disabled bay, or the new owner occupier would. Obviously that would be surveyed, so we wouldn't just straight away remove it, because obviously the disabled bay is anybody with a blue badge has the ability to use that disabled person's parking space. So we would survey that on 3 separate occasions to make sure that it wasn't being utilised, and if it wasn't, we would remove it. And if it was, and then that affected the person's driveway, who's maybe had a smaller car at that point, we would potentially carry out a revocation and then create a new parking space in another suitable area, if there was a suitable application for that.
Yeah, and this this bay is only blocking the driveway of the current applicant. It's not blocking somebody else's. I know it sounds like a silly question,
No,
but
yeah,
just to confirm it.
that's correct, Councillor Bowes, yes.
Anyone else? Councillor Redmond.
I think, given the fact that it's already an existing parking space in Woodcote Park there already, I think I'm quite happy to move that we grant the space.
I'll be happy to second that. Very care.
I've not got an issue with it. My only concern would be if it goes there. I'm only thinking about the applicant. If it goes exactly where it's proposed in the front of the person's drive, if there is somebody else in the street and comes and parks there, they can't get into their drive. Because it's no their parking bay, it's a disabled bay for anybody. So if somebody in the street comes and parks in front of their drive, they can't get in and out. And that's my only concern. But if the rest of the committee's happy to approve it, I've not got an issue with it. I just think there's a concern there. If we could have moved it one space down, that would allow in and out the drive. But I'm happy to go with it.
So, if no one else wishes to speak, we have a motion that's seconded. Sorry. Councillor Anslow, have you got your hand up there?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that Gary had already pointed out that there's a broken down vehicle and it's actually quite a narrow drive. So it sounds to me the applicant doesn't use it anyway. So it wouldn't be an issue for him trying to get in and out his drive. That's all I was it was just an observation.
Thank you. Gary, you were going to come on.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. It was just to clarify, similar to what Councillor Anslow was mentioning it to Bailey Care, yeah. So currently there is a broken down vehicle in the driveway. The driveway is not utilised, and just to add on to that fact, the vehicle that the applicant uses and has the blue badge registered to is too large to fit into the driveway, so it wouldn't be able to go in it anyway if there was a car parked in there anyway. That's just to clarify.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Any other contributions? Any objections to the motion? We agreed? Agreed. Thank you, everyone. And that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thanks, Chair.